we'll see how this goes. We're using some fairly elaborate equipment, and that consists of my phone right now. That's all that we're using is just my phone, and Rebecca's using my computer over in the corner to kind of. Can you see it on your screen, Becca? Or?
I can see it on the screen.
Okay, so basically we're just using my iPhone to do this video. So nothing really elaborate. If other people, shaky. As we move down the road, if we need to do this again, there isn't a lot of stuff that you need. It's not real difficult to do. What we're going to be making today are spheres. And generally with my spheres, I've got all kinds of stock that I can choose from. Lots of times I'll choose either a piece of raw wood like this that's already cylindrical. And you can see that this has some spalting in it. The problem with this one that I'm seeing right now is that it's only going to be 2 3/4 once that I do get it rounded off completely. So this is kind of small for a sphere for right now. I would suggest that you start with making your first sphere somewhere between 2.5 and 3 inches in diameter. And what I've done is I have one piece that I think is going to work fairly well. It's about 3.5 inches to start with by about 3 3/4. It is probably going to be about a 3-inch sphere. I also have some larger pieces of big leaf maple. Thank you, John Warren. And I have squared those off. So the very first thing that you're going to want to do is pick out a piece of stock, and you're going to want to get that into a cylindrical form. So I'm going to set this off to the side. I'm going to use these two. This as my drive, and this as my tail. And if you notice on both of them, they have the little spike in the middle, and they have a supporting ring around the outside, so that when this goes into the wood, it's also supported on that outside. If I tried to use one of these drives, you can see that that spike is going to go in quite a bit more, and using that as a drive center is going to be a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to get this in my headstock, this in my tailstock, and we'll start with this one. We'll round that one off a little bit.
I'm shaky.
You're shaky?
Yeah, look at me like.
Oh. All right, so I've got.
You're not shaky on the camera, Becca.
Okay, good. Sorry, I'm getting myself sick watching the camera over here.
Okay, so this isn't quite square. There is a way that you can do this if you have a square piece. I like them a little bit longer than they are going to be in diameter. So I do have a longer side to this. This is about 4.5. This is about 4 inches. So it's about a 1/2 inch longer. Your piece of wood should be about a 1/2 inch longer than your diameter is going to be. And the reason why it's about a 1/2 inch longer is so you've got a 1/4 inch on each side here for that little spike. You don't want those little holes on your sphere when you bring things together. And I also, I wouldn't want something like this. I'd probably cut this in half so that I have little waste wood on each side. I could put this in between centers and then start creating a sphere on one side. But from experience, I'm going to waste more of this wood, and I'm not going to get two out of there. So I'm going to mark my centers. I'm going to try to mark my centers. And my pencil, Becca?
That's a good question.
Well, thank you. There it is. And I'm just roughly going to mark the middle of these. And I'm going to press in a little bit, bring the tail up, lock that in place.
Ralph, could you mute? Could you mute?
Yes.
Ralph, could you mute your screen?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're showing up full screen every once in a while.
Okay. Let me mute here.
It's on the left-hand corner, lower left-hand corner.
Yeah, right there.
Say something.
All right. I'm back again. All right. So I've got my tool rest probably about 1/8 inch away. It is off a little bit. I'm fine with that. My piece of wood is larger than that sphere is going to be to start with. I've got this tightened in fairly well with that safety drive, with that little spike in the middle and the ring around the outside. It will spin if I get a catch here. So I'm not really worried about this flying out right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my protective gear on. And usually I have to do this. Not that there's a lot of dust in my shop. Lighting's okay. All right, so I'm going to get started, and I'm going to make this into a cylinder. Now, some people might be thinking that you could use a roughing gouge for this, but depending on which way your wood is cut and that it's coming off, do not use a roughing gouge. Use a bowl gouge, a heavier duty bowl gouge. You can see that these pieces are coming off because of the way that I have the wood sitting in here. As this piece gets pulled off, this could come into my hand, and I think I'm going to throw a glove on right now just because I've had that happen before. I'm turning at about 700 right now. I'm keeping my tool handle low. I'm going to tighten that up a little. Getting close to it being round on the end here. I've got just a little bit Probably a little bit more there. I'm using the microphone wood here to rough this out. Gonna move a little bit closer here. Check and make sure that it clears on the way around. You can see that it's almost round here. I've got just this little flat right here. I'm turning my tool so that I'm guiding that bevel to the outside of the tool. I'll come back this way towards the middle. I like the safety drive because it does stop when you do get it checked. Once you can get those from home state, pretty inexpensive. Remember this, you're always trying to cut downhill. So I'll start at the high spot, work my way down. Start at the high spot, work my way down. I'm going to stop. I should have one fairly large flat area. Other than that, the rest of it happens to be round. So I'm going to move this a little bit closer. I'm going to move this up a little. You should be cutting it about center. So when this is sitting on the tool rest, I think I'm a little bit high there. All right. I should be fairly close. I'm going to make one more cut here. Notice that I'm riding the bevel, this front edge of the tool. All right, taking a look at what I've got there. Have a little bit of tear off. I'm not worried about that because a majority of this is going to be gone anyway. There's some figure in here which is causing that tear off. A little bit of spalting. You can see it both on this side and when I rotate it on the other side also. So I'm pretty good with my cylinder now. Now I'm going to make my measurements. And my measurements are going to be, I'm going to measure the diameter of the cylinder, and I'm just taking a tape measure, and I'm trying to line this up with the edge and seeing, I'm going to say that that's probably 3 1/4 inches. Now, after you've done this for a while, you can just take your pencil and just kind of guesstimate like that. And I'm going to say that that's fairly close to 3 1/4 inches also. So it does take a little bit before you kind of get rid of the measuring aspect of it. So on my sphere or on my cylinder, I need to mark 3 1/4 inches. So I'm going to say that here's where I'm going to start. And the 3 1/4, that's where I'm going to end. Here's my starting, here's my end. Three and a quarter. I want to mark half of that. So half of my 3 1/4, half of 3 is 1.5 inches, and then half of a quarter is another 1/8. So I'm going to go 1.5 inches plus 1/8. That's 1 3/8. So there's my middle. And I'm going to mark that. What I want to do is I want to divide each of these halves into half. So my 1 5/8, I'm not going to measure. I know. It just kind of, as you start doing this, it gets to be pretty easy to kind of guesstimate where that middle happens to be. So here's my middle line right here. Here's an end line and an end line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Rebecca to grab me a parting tool.
Okay, you want to hold it for a second?
Sure. Tried to get all of my tools that I needed ahead of time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut on the outside of this end line and outside of this end line. Everything to the right or to the left of those end lines needs to go. I'm going to cut a double wide path on this so that my tool doesn't bind up. So now that I've got those starting lines cut, I'm going to have to go back with the parting tool and do that again. But I want to get rid of some of this outside stuff here. Some of you might say, well, how much of this outside stuff do you get rid of? I'm going to say you can get rid of all of this outside stuff up to that, what is it, probably like 3/4 of an inch? Mm-hmm. No, it's even less. Yeah. 3/8 of an inch. That's all that you need to support is that outside there and that portion there. So I'm going to use my parting tool again. Take a little more off. My parting tool there, take a little more off. Kind of clean up. Going to use my parting tool again, kind of clean that up a little bit more. And parting tool on this side. I'll have to take that off. Just like the other side. Just a little tug in there. This is also why you don't want such a long. This is also why you don't want such a long extra amount of wood on either side. The further out that you get, one, the more wood that you're wasting, but two, the more that this is going to have some wiggle room in there. So for that point that's in the end here, I've got plenty of room. I'm not going to have a point there on the end or over here on this side. Okay, so now the fun part begins. I've got my end, my middle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start cutting a 45-degree angle off of this end and a 45-degree angle off of this end. When you start cutting that 45, you don't want to start here at the line. You want to start out here on the end. A little bit at a time. It makes it easier to just follow the bevel, the front part of the tool. So there's one side. Now my goal is on the other side to do the same type of thing. And if you notice, I'd kind of like to have this, where I finished, be about the same on the other side. There's no way to really mark that other than to look over the top and make sure that that kind of lines up. So again, I'm going to start on the outside. Take a little bit off. I'm kind of looking at the two of them, and they are not lining up yet. No, I think I'm pretty close. I'm going to take my parting tool, cut in a little bit more there. Okay, and we're done. Well, not quite.
Can you move the light switch a little bit?
Should I move what?
This is a little dark here. Can you move your light just a little bit so I can see both sides? There we go. That's better. I think so.
Okay. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to take this middle portion off and this middle portion off, but I also have a middle portion here and a middle portion here because it's the middle of that very end and this point and the end and this point. So I'm going to switch now, and instead of using the large bowl gouge, I'm going to use a smaller spindle gouge. Going to move up a little bit so that I'm cutting at center. I always like starting on the end first. Now I'll start here. And if you take a look at it, this almost has that spherical look on this side. I've taken that very middle portion out over here, and then I took this down. You'll notice I never even got close to this middle line. I'm taking this portion off, and again, I'll start on the end. I'm taking that middle out, that edge. And now I'm going to come back, I'm going to hit this edge. I start right on the edge, about maybe think on either side of it, and then I start expanding out from there. You see that I have a little flap here. So I'll just kind of meld that in. I don't think I have the roundness that I do on the other side. I'm going to use a shear scrape. And I'm using the bottom portion of this cutter going to do the same thing on the other side, turning it so that I'm using the bottom side of that cutter. And I'm thinking I'm a little long on this side here. I'm going to drop the handle. As I drop the handle, it switches from a shear scrape to a shear cut. And you can see the stuff that's coming off is very, very, very thin. It's got some length to it. It's got some curl. I haven't even touched this middle line yet. So I think I'm going to one time come from this and overlap. One time from here, go through and overlap. I'm going to try to do the shear scrape. I'm going to drop this to 1/16 of an inch. I'm at about 1,000 right now. And now I'm going to switch the tool, going in the other direction. For those of you that have negative rake scrapers, now would be a wonderful time to try some of those out. I think that I'm fairly good as far as just a round shape right now. I'm going to show you how to use those negative rake scrapers right now if you have like a little bump or if you have a tool mark that you want to get out. I like the flat edge, the square edge, negative rake scrapers. They're only going to be touching one point on that sphere at one time. With the curved front, it has a tendency to dig in too much. So the flat ones work really well. All right. Do we have any questions?
Oh, sorry.
Do we have any questions right now before I switch from this between center portion? Do we have any questions?
Mark, you've taken that line out of the middle up there. You did that when you connected the two together, right? You don't need to keep that.
I've got just a little touch. No, not really. I don't worry too much about that. Is that Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't worry too much about that, Steve. Anybody else? Okay.
I just got a comment. With that bright light on that white wood, it's hard to point when you try to point things out. You might want to move the light to the side a bit when you do that.
This one.
Is that better or worse? Is that better or worse?
It's better, but do that again when you switch the light. There, that's even better.
Right here?
Do it once again. You dim the light a little bit more at one point in time. There, when your body is in front of it, it's better.
How's that?
There you go. Yeah, that's too bright. That's way too bright.
Still too bright?
Yep.
They want you to do
There.
How about, is that better?
That's right there is perfect.
Okay. I have a light behind me up to my right, and I have a dimmer light up to the left, and then the overhead light. So, okay. Other questions? All right, so I'm going to take this out of between my centers. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take my tailstock out. And I'm going to take the drive center out. Again, the safety drive. And what I'm going to put in is I'm going to put in a chuck. And in that chuck, I'm going to put in a little holder. So what I've done is I've turned that to a round cylinder. I put it in my chuck. I've kind of rounded that edge off a little bit, and I have a little cup center here. So these are referred to as cup chucks. Most of my cup chucks that I use, I also label, just in case someone comes through, not mentioning names, and she starts looking for stuff.
Is that cup chuck or up chuck?
Some of the times it's both. No, a cup chuck. And on the other side, what I'm going to do is I'm also going to bring in another cup chuck. And what I have is I have the Nova system, and I have created an insert for it. So that just fits right in there. And those cups that you can make can vary in size. And I've got some plans to make a cup that will thread onto the end of this. As of yet, I haven't gotten that done. What was someone saying? They're still trying to find the top of their workbench. I think I'm in that category too. So I'm just going to stick with these two for right now. what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that spear and I'm going to put it between those cups.
Mark, Carter makes a drive and live cup center, and they're not real expensive, and they're a neoprene on the inside, or not neoprene, but a plastic on the inside, and they handle almost any kind of sphere, I think.
If those are the ones that are out at your place,
they are.
Okay, so for $109, I can make a lot of these various sizes, whether it's smaller like that. I've got some larger ones like this. And that cup, if it matches the diameter of the sphere closely, it's going to hold it better. So let's say that I have this one and I put that in there. That fits pretty well. This larger one, even a little less. I kind of like having a cup that's going to match that diameter of the sphere that I'm making. So I have some that are larger. I don't have them here right now. They're in the house. And I like to cup that a little bit deeper, a little bit wider, so that it holds that. Because right now, I don't want that flying out of there. That's why I make the wooden ones, and I've got a whole bunch of cups for those.
Yep, just another option.
Just another option, and it's a good option. If you don't have that end, I think the Nova system, I think that's about $80. You know, it's up to you. All right. So now I'm going to Marlene, question?
Yeah. Would you hold up that first one that you said you thought fit quite well again for me, please?
So all I did was turn the tenon on the end, and you can see that it's dovetailed.
Yeah.
And then I just rounded it off, cut a little cup in the middle.
Okay, thank you.
That fits really well in there. You're welcome. All right, so now I'm going to take these edges off. Usually, if you'd like to, instead of cutting those off with your parting tool or with your spindle gouge, you've got a little saw. You can get in there. And just trim that off. What we're going to do is we're going to nibble away at it a little bit at a time. I'm going to get a little bit closer here. And if you take a look at, I need to make one more cut a little bit lower to get this down. one of the nice things that I like about making my own cup chucks is that if I get too close to them and I hit them with the tool, I just find another piece of scrap, make another one. Not that that's ever happened. I do have a little knob here. I'm going to go just a touch more. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this a little bit. It seems to be running pretty true. You can see there's my burn mark. So Steve was talking about it's got kind of a plastic that is it UHMV, whatever, the plastic holders that would prevent some of that burning. Oops. Oh, did we use our audio? Oh.
Sorry, friends.
That's all right.
Okay, we're back.
So now I'm going to light this up. We're going to see how it's spinning. Off a little bit. I'm going to start in the middle. Going to follow my bevel to the outside. And I want to ride that bevel on the outside of the sphere as much as I can. If I were to take my tool and ride this tool tip into the sphere, I'm going to end up with a groove in there. And that's, I don't want a groovy sphere. Sorry, Clark. I'm going to stop this. I'm going to take a peek at it, kind of liking it. I'm going to rotate it just a little bit more. Again, kind of that spear scrape, spear cut. Just lightly going through. I've mentioned that negative rake paper before. Being able to clean up some of the tool marks that we have. I'm going to say that I'm pretty close. Things are looking pretty good right now. So now I'm going to sand it. So I'm going to move my tool rest away. Out of the way. And I'm going to grab my sanding bucket. And you don't want to sand fast. 400 to 500. Once that I've done that, I'm going to rotate it a little bit more. Oh. I'm going to spend the most time with my roughest grit. Right now I'm using 100. When you make your cup chuck, to have that little indentation so that you can get your salmon pad in there is really nice. All right, from my 100, I would go to 120, 150, 180, on and on and on. More than likely, I'd put shellac or sanding sealer on this, sand it lightly again with 320. And once that I'm done with most of my sanding here, I'll go to my power sander and with a kind of the spongy pad. And that way, as you're pressing on it, it kind of wraps around it to help sand. Now, I think last time I did this out at John's place, they took the sphere and they started rolling it across the floor to see if it was round or not. I don't know. You're just going to have to take Becca's word that it is fairly round.
Hold it up, Mark. Thank you.
You're welcome. I am going to do a little bit more sanding on here, but somehow I think you have better things to do than watching me sand for a better portion of the day. Questions?
Mark, the ends that were in the cup or the cup drives, those
Yep.
are what you'll be sanding now, or
Those are what I would be using to sand with now. Yes.
okay.
And in fact, Kleber, you could even make them a little bit smaller than what they are right now, because in order to sand this, you don't need as much holding power as when you're cutting it. When you're cutting it, I got those burn marks on there because you have to have a fair amount of pressure on there. So you could have another set of cup chucks just for sanding, almost that 3/8 inch, just kind of holding it in between.
Right. Just kind of a gentler hold.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Mark, on the drive cups.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried using like that shelf material that they use for jam chucks in those little cups to give you a little more grip?
I have used double-sided tape. I've used like the shelf liner, the spongy shelf liner.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that, and after about 3 or 4 spears, if it happens to spin, it just tears that out of there.
Yeah.
So I just go.
So you had glued it in there then, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
Glue and then some double-sided tape. A double-sided tape almost worked well, or worked best. But again, you're replacing that every, probably 3 or 4 spheres because it gets dust on it and it doesn't hold.
Yeah.
And excuse me. Other questions?
Mark, I glued a piece of leather inside my cup, and that gets rid of the burn mark, and it lasts for a long time.
Yep. I don't have, most of my stuff isn't leather. I don't even, what's my wallet? I guess my wallet's leather.
That's about it.
Yeah, a piece of leather would work really well.
I've got a friend that's a leather worker. I get all his scraps.
Okay, keep me in mind at Christmas time.
Okay.
If you're interested in getting leather, go down to Gartner's Shoe Hospital. He'll find some for you.
Yeah, I should go down there for some adjustments to my shoes also. Other questions?
A dry wood that you started out with, right? Not wet wood. It would crack, wouldn't it?
If I was using wet wood, what I would do when I got it kind of in a rough form, even before I started sanding, is I would take that and I would grab the wet shavings and I'd put it in a brown paper bag, kind of like a McDonald's bag or something like that. And I'd let it sit for a couple of months. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I'd come back to it. And we've had really good luck with that, along with, doing the rough turning for bowls like that also. Thank you, Dewey. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, everyone with those words of advice way back in the day, because it works well. So I think some of these that are in here were rough turned.
Yeah.
And what I do is when I get an odd shaped piece of wood like this will become a spear. It's got some nice faulting in it. I'll just set that off to the side, and then eventually it becomes a roughed out spear and a roughed out spear. And here's, Dolly, I think you had a crab apple bowl. Here's a crab apple sphere. And here's one with the knob still on it. Poplar. This one does have sanding sealer on it, because I can see the shininess.
Had wormholes in it.
Mark?
Yes.
I was staying muted to be quiet, but you're doing a great job. And yeah, that crabapple one I made the other day, I pulled it out of the out of the clippings or whatever. And Alan wanted to know if it was really, really supposed to be round. Not doing what it should do yet.
Well, let me check here. Where's my tape measure, Becca?
Right there.
Alan, it's round.
Hey, Mark, we have a couple of the spheres that you've done. Have you done any ornamentation on any of them?
Any?
We have her plain, but have you done any burning or any carving on them or anything like that to embellish them?
If we end up with any that may have a crack in them, either something that was in the wood to start with and I didn't notice it right away, Rebecca and I will do the Zentangle on it. So she'll just burn right along that crack, and then she'll start her Zentangle designs on it. And we've also done dyeing, beading. We did the
a little bit of inlay or turquoise in them.
Yep, we've done some inlay and turquoise in them. We've taken some solder and drilled holes, and then put the solder in there and cut it off so that it looks like little stars or little shiny dots on there. It's a full-time job when you start thinking about the ways that it can be enhanced. So yes, Becky, lots and lots of ways.
Do you also want to mention if you don't have a solid block, you can glue?
Oh, Rebecca is telling me that if you do not have a solid piece of wood like this, it is possible for you to glue up
If you have flat stock or
Either small squares, flat stock with a piece of veneer in between, whatever stuff doesn't fit into one of your other categories, more than likely it's going to end up working really well for a sphere. So unfortunately, that's one of the reasons why I don't get rid of anything here in the shop. I guess that's a good thing and a bad thing, but I enjoy making the spheres. Once that you've made 3 or 4 using this method, it starts to become easier. Just remember to take those top parts off, the mountains, a little bit at a time. It's easier to take it off slowly than to go in there, take off too much. That's hard to correct. Now you end up with a sphere that is teeny tiny. And I'm looking around, and I have those also as smaller spheres. But in the house, we've got a couple of jars that have just small 1.5-inch spheres in them. Buckeye burl, walnut, just all the different colors, different flavors. Those of you that are making candles for the pigtail flippers and for ice cream scoops and things like that, if you end up with a small piece like that, you can make a small sphere out of it. I would suggest starting with a larger 2-inch, 2 to 3-inch piece, though, to start with until you get the hang of it. Other questions?
Is there any extra problems with doing this inch ones or something like that?
If you make a mistake, you don't have a lot of material to work with.
Yeah, okay.
If I start out with a larger sphere with a bigger hunk, I can make all kinds of mistakes. No one knows that, I wanted a 4-inch sphere out of it when it's actually a 2-inch sphere. So I would say no, just same process, same measurements. Your measurements, because it's smaller, again, are going to be more critical. But just kind of look for that flowing curve on the end, and should be good. Anybody else?
Offer that golf gloves works really good for your left hand. They fit nice and tight. They grip well. And just something I've discovered that works good for me for gloves. Thanks.
Yeah. What is it? Harvest? What's the place over in Bismarck?
Multiple people can be on.
I don't know.
Yeah, just a cheaper glove, just something to protect the hand from things kind of sticking in it. Doesn't mean
Menards carries them.
Oh. Menards carries them?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the other tool place? Harbor Freight.
Yeah.
I think these were Harbor Freight specials, probably.
Max, Lowe's, they all carry them.
Yeah. I'm just happy when I find something that fits my hand, because my gloves don't always fit well. Guy, you're so lucky that you can wear kind of that middle of the road glove. Other questions?
Do you find that you can use the same cup chucks with the wetward that you've turned and now is a little bit deformed that you originally used? Or are you using different cups when you have to turn those down and get them back into round?
Nope, exactly the same ones. It's kind of a ballpark type of thing, Kevin, where as long as it's fairly close, it's going to have that same holding power. I've got most of my chucks are kind of medium for that 2 to 3 inch. I don't have a lot of real small ones. If I do have a small one, I usually have to make a new cup chuck for it. But if it's a wet piece of wood, you should be able to use the same cup chucks that you use to rough it out. You're correct. Others?
Good job. I picked up a lot of good information and appreciate your work on it.
Thank you, Gary. And I do owe you some spheres also.
I would echo that, Mark. Well done.
Thank you, Mr. Day.
Mark, I think you
agreed, Mark. Nice job.
Thank you. Thanks, Cleaver.
Great job.
Mark,
thanks.
I think Karen was going to tell us.
Nice job,
Thank
Mark
you,
and
Karen.
Becky, for being the cameraman or camera person on this job.
Well, I think after today, we kind of realized that anybody can do this now. So all we have to do is just pick our next topic if we have to meet virtually like this. And I think we can get things taken care of.
Mark, I think you should be a teacher when you grow up.
Say that again, Sister Karen.
I said you did a very good job, and I think you should be a teacher when you grow up.
I'll try. Grow up or grow out? What do you mean? Oh.